You did an awful lot of research that went into that book. What was the most surprising thing that you came across?
The most surprising and frustrating thing for me really was not it was not related to health anxiety. It was related to the relationship between industry and government. And when I say that, I mean that uh, companies in this country are allowed to essentially introduce chemicals in products without having to pass even commonsensical steps
Hmm.
of testing things for health consequences. And now, this is not true in Europe, and I'll just give you an example. There are something like 400 chemicals that go into cosmetics in the United States that are illegal in Europe. And you will find some companies that are making the same product with different constituent chemicals, one to sell to a European market where they're regulated and one to the United States market where they're not regulated. Now, you may be a person who thinks that deregulation is the way to go. The big government is the cause of all problems, and you hear a lot about this these days, that getting government off of businesses' back is the only way to get the economy moving again. Well, the trouble with this particular story is we already essentially live in a deregulated world. Like, chemicals are essentially deregulated. There's something like 80,000 chemicals in use today, and there only have been 200 out of all the 80,000 that have ever been tested for health consequences, and only 5 that have ever been banned. Now, out of 80,000, that's not very many. So we live in essentially a deregulated world where government says to industry, just regulate yourselves. I should say industry has figured out how to get government to let them regulate themselves. So what does a deregulated world look like? A deregulated world looks like a place where you have women with flame retardants in their breast tissue. You have hormone disrupting chemicals in our drinking water. You have neurotoxic chemicals coming out of our paint cans. I mean, you name it. This is what a deregulated world looks like, which is a culture where these chemicals are saturating people's bodies, and we're finding out year after year after year about the health consequences that this is causing. Now, is that a desirable world? Now, it's a desirable world for industry, but it's not a desirable world for the public health. And I think if you can say anything about Europe, and particularly places like Scandinavia, they take public health as a much more serious issue than we do. They decide that industry comes second, public health comes first. And I understand this is a philosophical question. I mean, do you feel like you should create jobs at all cost? And that's a real question, because if real jobs means creating products that are going to cause health problems, that's a difficult bargain to make.
Yeah.
This is what we went through. I mean, I should say that the tobacco industry is where a lot of these companies learned their tricks. And you don't want to have an industry or a culture that says, go ahead, continue making cigarettes and convincing people to smoke if we're going to see consequences like we've seen down the line. So this is really what we're talking about.
Yeah.